occupying. How can this possibly be true in their world and their view that this power should go unchecked in all regards, that whatever the Prime Minister says is law and rule without question? We are here to question. We will keep questioning until we get the answers Canadians deserve.
Statements by members. Déclaration de député. L'honorable député de la Pointe-de-L'Île.
The honourable member for La Pointe-de-L'Île. Mr. Speaker, the government has finally stopped deporting Haitian refugees and citizens because of the political, violent crisis that has been going on for months in Haiti. But that does not excuse the government for all the years during which they treated Haitians as simple numbers. For 5 years, the Bloc has been calling on the government to normalize their status. 3 months ago, when the crisis intensified, we called on the government to stop deporting, and it refused. For 3 months, Ottawa has been deporting families in the heart of the violence. Last Thursday, a father and his 11-year-old daughter were stopped and deported. Finally, this government has woken up. But the Haitian community is wondering when these deportations will start up again. At a minimum, the government has to commit to declaring a moratorium as long as the situation is not safe in Haiti. The honourable member for Miramichi.
Miramichi has lost a great legend this month when Matilda Murdoch passed away just days after celebrating her 99th birthday. Matilda was a renowned fiddle player and composer. After teaching herself how to play the fiddle as a child, she composed hundreds of pieces of music and spread her musical influence throughout the world. Her outstanding playing earned her a number of awards and honors. She has been inducted into the New Brunswick Country Music Hall of Fame, awarded the Order of Canada and New Brunswick, and received the East Coast Music Awards Stompin' Tom Corners Award for her lifetime achievement in music. She appeared on the popular Don Messer Jubilee and had several songs recorded by Messer himself. The sweetheart of Logieville was a world-renowned fiddler, but Miramichi was her home. Her music was inspired by life on the river, and she shared her gift by helping to found the Miramichi Fiddlers Association. Her music and wonderful spirit will truly be missed, but will live on forever, and I'm sure she is doing the Logieville two-steps right now in heaven. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Flamborough-Glanbrook.
One of the greatest joys of my life, Speaker, is being a father and a grandfather. My wife and I raised our children to be honest, work hard, contribute to society, and have a positive influence in the community. However, it profoundly troubles me to see the effects of this Liberal government. This Liberal PM is raising taxes and making life more expensive for all Canadians. 2 of my sons and their spouses are residents of the riding Hamilton West, Ancaster, Dundas. They, as well as all Hamilton residents, are feeling the negative effects of this Liberal government. My children are now raising children of their own. It's becoming harder and harder to do this under these Liberals. The question on whether my family can afford things is something that concerns me and consumes their everyday life. If my granddaughter Nola wants to play soccer, my son and his wife now have to evaluate whether they can afford it because these Liberals are taking away benefits from my family and taxing them higher. Mr. Speaker, when will this Liberal government realize they're not helping Canadians? When will they stop penalizing working families trying to create a future for themselves and their families?
The honourable member for Pierrefonds-Dollard.
Mr. Speaker, I have wonderful news to share with the House today. Yeah. Sarah Jane Daigle, who is a longtime resident of the city of Dollard-des-Ormeaux, is an exceptional member of the West Island Association for the Intellectually Handicapped. Now this March, Sarah will be heading to Abu Dhabi to compete in the Special Olympic Games as one of Team Canada's top swimmers.
That's good.
Yes. And Mr. Speaker, Sarah can do it all. She trains weekly in track and field, bowling, and swimming. And not only that, back in 2005, Sarah was at the Special Olympic Games in Japan, and there she won a gold medal and 2 silver medals in the wonderful sport of snowshoeing. Now, Sarah will be proudly representing Canada once again, and I am certain that all members of this House encourage her and are very proud of all our Special Olympians. And I invite all members to say with me, go Sarah! Go!
Honourable member for Hamilton. Hamilton Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, not all heroes wear capes, such as Elaine Travers, a constituent in my riding, and today I pay tribute to her bravery and selflessness. Elaine's close friend Kathy was diagnosed with kidney disease 20 years ago. In early 2018, Kathy had 90% kidney failure, and Elaine decided to donate a kidney. Surgery took place January 15th, and both Kathy and Elaine are doing well. But this is not an event without unnecessary hardship. Elaine and Kathy are like most people. They can't afford an extended period of time off work, and our current EI system forces them back to work before they're ready. Elaine could only afford to be off for 2 weeks. A kidney donor requires 6 to 8 weeks recovery, but Elaine is already back at work. Elaine could not afford her income cut by 45%, the terms of our current EI sick leave. Kathy's recovery is 46 months, and she too is facing a major reduction in income. No one should be prevented from getting a life-saving organ transplant because it's unaffordable. Elaine, you are a hero to us all. Thank you so much, and a big thanks to other donors in Canada.
L'honorable député de Vimy.
The Honourable Member for Vimy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to welcome many of the members of the board of Value Village here today. This retailer is known in Canada. It employs 10,000 people throughout its 36 stores, including in my riding. This business is a leader in the environment and has invested in local communities. It gives me great pleasure to welcome them here today and to congratulate them on the $123 million that they have invested in not-for-profit organizations over the past 10 years in Quebec, and for the £320 million worth of used clothing that they sell throughout the country and that they recycle. And I also thank them for their commitment to improving the lives of Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Durham.
Mr. Speaker, I noticed something on my commute back from the GTA this weekend. The communities in Ottawa South, Ottawa West Nepean are facing the same challenges with this Liberal government that we see in Durham. Taxes are up on families, particularly those with kids in fitness and music. Taxes are up on seniors, particularly those who saw the tax-free savings account cut back. We see small businesses being hit, Mr. Speaker, by payroll taxes that came in January. And Ottawa faces transit gridlock as well, Mr. Speaker. Slow infrastructure money moving from the Liberal government and a cut to a transit tax credit that means it now costs up to 15% more for them to take transit to work. Whether it's the GTA or whether it's Ottawa South or Ottawa West Nepean, Canadians are getting squeezed. Now, Mr. Speaker, we're seeing a resignation each week with the Liberal government, but on October 21st, Canadians can resign them all.
The Honourable Member for Alfred Pellan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In this month of February, I want to talk to you about the Hooked on School days that took place from February 11th to 15th.
Demonstration that our kids are committed and determined to achieve their goals and nourish their dreams. It is this fire burning in their eyes that moves mountains and shapes the artisans of tomorrow.
Hooked on School Days celebrates their hard-won battles, whether it's course by course, level by level, or year by year. Above all, it is the encouragement of teachers, family, and friends that makes a real difference. And so to all students, big and small, I say to you, congratulations on your daily work. Congratulations on your courage and your tenacity. Congratulations for everything you do every day. I wish you all every success.
The Honourable Member for Fundy Royal.
Mr. Speaker, last week I delivered Valentine's for Vets, and I met Merchant Navy veteran John Stevenson, who shared with me his stories of service and memories of lost comrades at sea. He asked me to share this poem with the House and all Canadians in remembrance. In ocean waste no poppies blow, no crosses stand in ordered row. There young hearts sleep beneath the wave, the spirited, the good, the brave. But stars a constant vigil keep for them who lie beneath the deep. 'Tis true you cannot kneel in prayer on certain spot and think he's there, but you can to the ocean go, see whitecaps marching row on row. No one for him will always ride in and out with every tide. And when your span of life is past, he'll meet you at the captain's mast. And they who mourn on distant shore for sailors who'll come home no more can dry their tears and pray for these who rest beneath the heaving seas. for stars that shine and winds that blow, and whitecaps marching row on row. And they can never lonely be, for when they lived, they chose the sea. Lest we forget.
The honourable member for Medicine Hat, Cardston Warner.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government is in chaos, which means they are not spending any time fixing the energy sector crisis that they created. Today, the United We Roll convoy arrived in Ottawa. Their purpose is principled and worthy, as they create awareness for the oil and gas industry and raise concerns about the carbon tax and repealing the No More Pipelines Bill C-69 and Bill C-48. They are concerned, like millions of Canadians, that the current Liberal government has not and is not supporting them, their families, their communities, or the energy sector. They feel that they have lost their voice to a government that no longer works for them, and they will not be ignored any longer. As our Conservative leader has said, the United We Roll convoy is a testament to the importance of Canada's energy sector and the crisis it's facing. Canadian energy workers deserve a government that supports their industry and champions it worldwide. That's right. Conservatives will fix the Liberal mess and get people back to work. Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Brampton North.
Mr. Speaker, Black History Month has always been about celebrating the achievements of Black Canadians, both past and present. This year's theme of Black Canadian youth, boundless, rooted, and proud, is the perfect opportunity for me to highlight a young girl in my riding of Brampton North, Malia Alstrom, who shows every sign of being a leader amongst the young Canadians of tomorrow. For 4 years running, Malia has sold hot chocolate in her driveway to support the Peel Regional Police's Toys for Tots program. She was just 6 years old when she started and has since raised close to $3,000. This money helps buy Christmas toys for children in my city who are most in need. Malia, thank you for your hard work, and thank you for helping your fellow Bramptonians. I look forward to seeing you make a difference in our community and perhaps all across Canada.
The honourable member for Ottawa West Nepean.
Mr. Speaker, last week I hosted a town hall meeting in my riding with a panel of 7 people, all of whom are living with intellectual disabilities. I was impressed with Doolin, who told me, "Don't see my disability, see my ability." The message from the panelists was clear. We want to work, just give us a chance. Les personnes avec les déficiences intellectuelles.
People with intellectual disabilities have the highest unemployment rate in the country. But once more, it has been shown that when they have support and they have an opportunity, they will succeed.
To be a leader in this regard. Local organizations like OCAPTI and Live, Work, Play have long been supporting those with intellectual disabilities to find work in the private sector and the public service. I am pleased that with the support of the Treasury Board Secretariat and the Public Service Commission, Live, Work, Play has now facilitated the employment of 75 people with intellectual disabilities in 25 departments. We need more of these kinds of partnerships so we all see the ability. Thank you.
The honourable member for Foothills.
The Canadian dream represents an opportunity to build a brighter future for our kids. As a father of 3, I know how expensive it is to raise a family. Programs like the Children's Fitness Tax Credit were critical for us to be able to afford our kids volleyball, hockey, and dance. But a trust fund prime minister felt that as a young family, we were too rich to have those tax credits and took them away. Instead, he is raising taxes on Canadian families. Shame. Carbon tax, EI, CPP, and on April 1st, taxes go up again on beer and wine, thanks to the Liberals' unprecedented escalator tax. Wow. Because of failed Liberal policies, Canadians are paying more for housing, gas, and groceries, and also for our children's sports, arts, and school textbooks. Liberal deficits are getting deeper, and our taxes are getting higher. The Liberals are spending the Canadian dream out of reach. Conservatives will stand with hardworking Canadian families. We will scrap the carbon tax, we will build pipelines, and we will get Canada back on track.
The honourable member for Halifax.
Mr. Speaker, today my city of Halifax is in pain. Residents of the Quartz Drive in the neighborhood of Spryfield were awoken last night by a loud bang, screams, and the truly horrifying sight of their neighbor's home engulfed in raging flames. An update from the Halifax police tell us that while the parents remain in hospital, the lives of all 7 children from the same family have been lost. Further reporting from the harrowing scene tells us that the 9 refugees were from Syria who came to Canada, to Halifax in 2017 in search of a better life. I've spoken with Imam Abdallah Yusri of the Majid Mosque in Halifax, and I'm reassured that our city is coming together to support the survivors. The loss, however, is immense. Tonight I'm going home to our grieving community. It's still early, but in the days ahead, we will surround one another with love and support and strength in the wake of this profound tragedy, and I know that Halifax will rise to the occasion as it always has. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Algoma, Manitoula, Kapuskasing.
Susan Clark is a diabetes educator making a big difference in people's lives. She noticed that people could easily find expert advice on education, nutrition, and stress management, but recognized the gap for those who needed to exercise. Inspired by studies that showed using something as simple as 2 cans of soup to exercise just 10 minutes a day was beneficial for health and fitness, Sue put together a program for her clients, calling it From Soup to Tomatoes. She knew any program had to be free, easily accessible, designed to address mobility issues, and above all, be led by a professional to ensure safety and avoid injuries. 13 years ago, classes started in Espanola. A few years later, the program began webcasting so people could exercise remotely at home and in group settings. Now, with a website and a YouTube channel, From Soup to Tomatoes is helping people, get this, around the world become healthier while saving healthcare dollars. Today, I thank Sue for her vision and encourage everyone to look for From Soup to Tomatoes online. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Niagara Falls.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in the House today to bring attention to the questions raised by LavScam and if the rule of law in Canada has been compromised. Now, the Office of the Attorney General must remain autonomous and maintain its independence from political pressure. It is, in fact, the cornerstone of our democracy, and the member from Vancouver Granville was very succinct on this point in her most recent public letter. One part that particularly resonated with me is the following. It is a pillar of our democracy that our system of justice be free from even the perception of political interference and uphold the highest levels of public confidence. That is why, Mr. Speaker, it's imperative that the former Attorney General and Mr. Butts be allowed to speak at the Justice Committee. Canadians must have the assurance that the rule of law in Canada has been upheld and has been in no way brokered or suppressed. It is fundamental and must be applied equally to all persons. As Martin Luther King stated, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Boniface Saint-Vital. Mr. Speaker, ever since 2008, the third Monday of February in Manitoba is dedicated to the memory of our great Métis leader, Louis Riel. On Louis Riel Day, we celebrate Louis Riel's vision of a province where all cultures would be respected. He recognized the important and equal place that French and English occupy in our province. Louis Riel created the Assiniboine Legislative Assembly to advise his provisional government. This assembly was the foundation for the current Manitoba Legislative Assembly. Of the 24 elected assembly members, 12 would represent the Francophone population and 12 the Anglophone population. Furthermore, 3/4 would be Métis. Louis Riel defended with courage and tenacity the rights of the Métis in Manitoba, and that is why we pay tribute to him today. Thank you.
Oral questions, questions orales. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister's principal secretary resigned. And we know that it's because of the bribery and corruption scandal that's touched the Prime Minister's office. Now, if the principal secretary is innocent, why did the Prime Minister accept his resignation? The Right Honourable Prime Minister Mr. Speaker, I accepted Gerald Butt's resignation, and I have to say he served our country with integrity and sage advice, and I thank him for his service and his continued friendship. Mr. Butts has always put respect for our institutions as his very highest priority, and that's why he took the decision to resign. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Why did Mr. Butts resign?
Yeah.
The Prime Minister's story on this has changed multiple times since the scandal was first brought to light. And now we find out that the key strategist in the Liberal Prime Minister's office, the architect of the Liberal government policy, has resigned. But in so doing, he is pretending that he has done nothing wrong. So if the Prime Minister is so sure that these allegations are false, and if Mr. Butts did nothing wrong, then why did the Prime Minister accept his resignation?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Gerald Butts has always believed in the confidence that Canadians must have in our institutions, and indeed believe deeply in the work that this government needs to continue to do to deliver for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. That is why he made the decision to step down, to step away, because the work that this government is doing, and indeed the confidence that Canadians must have in their institutions and the processes we have, comes before all else.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Canadians are losing confidence in this government because every single day the story changes. So now the explanation is that Gerald Butts was so good at his job that he just had to resign in scandal. But it's a continuation of a theme we've seen for days now. First, he tried to blame the former Attorney General. Then he tried to blame Scott Bryson. All the while, he was directing Liberals on the Justice Committee to block attempts at inviting key officials to testify. Do these sound like the actions of a man who has nothing to hide?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
As always and will always stand up for the institutions and the principles that underlie the strength of our democracy. We're unequivocal about that. That's why whether it's respecting the independence of members of parliamentary committees or making sure that we are allowing for the full scope of judicial independence, we will always defend the systems and the institutions that keep Canada safe and prosperous as a democracy.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, when these allegations were first raised, the Prime Minister tried to dismiss them as being completely false. His story then changed multiple times. He's blamed several individuals, and now his principal advisor has quit. But there is one person who could clear up a lot of the issues around this situation, and that's the one person that the Prime Minister won't allow to speak. He continually speaks for the Attorney General, but I believe Canadians would like to hear from herself. Will the Prime Minister do the right thing and waive the attorney-client privilege that he claims to have and let the former Attorney General speak?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, with everything this government has done, domestically, internationally, internally, we always consistently stand up for the rule of law, for the independence of our judiciary. We will continue to do that and continue to do the right thing. In the matter of solicitor-client privilege, the member opposite must know that there are real dangers of unintended consequences, particularly on the two court cases currently wending their way through the courts. That is why I have asked our Attorney General to give me advice on the very important matter.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I think the unintended consequences he's worried about is losing more key staff from the Prime Minister's office as the truth comes out on this. So it's clear that we're just going to get the rehashed talking points and the Prime Minister's rhetoric, trying to convince Canadians that there's nothing to see here. So I'll ask him a very specific question, and this is one that should be easy for him to answer. The Budget Implementation Act became law on June 21st, 2018, which means that's when deferred prosecution agreements became possible. Can the Prime Minister tell this House how many times since June 21st of last year did Gerald Butts meet with the former Attorney General?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Mr. Speaker, our cabinet gets together every Tuesday to talk about a broad range of issues. We continue to meet regularly as MPs, as caucus members. Members in my office are engaged constantly with various departments and with ministers to stand up for Canadian jobs, to make sure we're moving forward in the right way, to make sure we're standing up for the institutions and principles that underpin our democracy. We will always work hard to make sure we're delivering properly for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata-Les Basques. Mr. Speaker, last week, the Minister of Economic Development and the Minister of Public Services and Procurement declared on television that it's important that we have the version of the former Minister of Justice. We agree. This is why we were disappointed when Liberal members of the Justice Committee refused to invite and keep refusing to invite Gerald Butts. It's clear that the member for Vancouver-Granville wants to give her version of the story. The Prime Minister has given us 5 versions so far. Will he allow the former Minister of Justice to speak by waiving privilege? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are getting advice on the solicitor-client privilege. We want to act in respect of all laws and rules. The Honourable Member. All the Prime Minister has to do is to allow her to speak, to waive privilege. He refuses to do so. The Justice Committee is refusing to do its work and investigate these serious allegations of political obstruction. Canadians want the truth. They want transparency.
Be free from even the perception of political interference and uphold the highest levels of public confidence.
That was the former Minister of Justice. That was her speaking. If he won't waive privilege, will he call for an independent inquiry? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we have entire confidence in the Ethics Commissioner. We trust him to do his work. We support him in this work, and we will welcome anything he has to say with great openness. The member across the way should know that members of the Justice Committee decide on what they will do. They are masters of their committee.
Member for Timmins James Bay.
So Jerry Butts, the architect of Sunny Ways, has been packing under a storm of corruption. So it's up to this Prime Minister to come clean over allegations that his office attempted to strong-arm the Attorney General into taking a fall in one of the biggest corruption cases in memory. Now, this Prime Minister promised to do things differently, but the SNC scandal is corroding his credibility, so he needs to stop hiding. Will he waive solicitor-client privilege, and will he agree to an independent inquiry to restore the confidence of the Canadian people in him as Prime Minister?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have an Ethics and Conflict of Interest Commissioner to determine the reality in issues just like this. He is pursuing his investigation, and as I said from the very first day, we welcome that work. In the matter of solicitor-client privilege, it's obviously a matter we have to consider very carefully. There is a real risk of unintended consequences, particularly on the 2 court cases currently underway right now. But I have asked our Attorney General for advice on this matter.
Honourable Member for Timmins James Bay.
I'm listening really hard, but for a Prime Minister who claims to be innocent, my God, he's sounding guilty. Because the client here is the Prime Minister, and the question is whether he tried to strong-arm his former Attorney General and then had her fired because she wouldn't take a fall in one of the biggest corruption cases. So stop hiding behind the legal games. Let her speak. Enough with this, he said. And then he said something different. And when that didn't work, he said something else about what she was supposed to say. Just let her speak. Do the right.
I remind the Honourable Member for Timmins James Bay of the rule, of course, that he's familiar with, that one must direct one's comments to the Chair. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, unlike the member opposite who's speaking disparagingly about laws and legal issues, we continue to respect our system of justice. We respect the independence of the judiciary, and we will always do our work that way. That is why we welcome the news that the Ethics Ethics Commissioner is going to be looking into this matter, and we will fully cooperate with them. That is something that Canadians expect as we uphold the highest standards of their faith in our institutions.
Member for Milton.
Mr. Speaker, what Canadians are asking very clearly and very simply is, why do we have to continuously hear the story from the Prime Minister's point of view as opposed to hearing it from the former Attorney General's point of view? Now, I know one could possibly say as an excuse that sometimes we perceive situations differently depending upon what gender we are, but this is the rule of law. And, Mr. Speaker, what Canadians want to hear specifically is, what does the former Attorney General have to say? Will the Prime Minister waive his solicitor-client privilege?
Honourable Prime Minister, the Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that the Prime Minister has asked me for a legal opinion on the question of solicitor-client privilege. I am studying that. I'm studying that issue, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order. I'm having trouble hearing the Honourable Minister of Justice. I know members want to hear both the question and the answer, so we'll have a little order. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, to continue, I am studying the issue and will provide my legal opinion in due course. It would be inappropriate for me, Mr. Speaker, to say anything more.
The member for Milton. Order.
Speaker, this Attorney General has already said many things about what he believes. The former Attorney General believes, thinks, or even did. So therefore, it should take him very simply not much time to determine whether or not she can go ahead and speak. But now that I have him on his feet, Mr. Speaker, I'm very curious. Last week, in a newspaper report, this Attorney General indicated that the matter regarding deferred remediation agreements and SNC-Lavalin was very much still alive and sitting on his desk. I'd like to ask the member, conveniently from Montreal, whether or not he has made a decision on the SNC-Lavalin issue.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I stated in that interview the law of Canada as it was passed and as is still the case, and it would be inappropriate for me to comment further.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabasca. Order, please. Mr. Speaker, last week we had the resignation of the former Minister of Justice. Yesterday, the resignation of the Prime Minister's Principal Secretary, who is also his best friend. And this following serious allegations of pressure by the PMO on the former Attorney General. And this in a matter of bribery and fraud. Canadians want the truth. Only one person can give it to us. Why will the Prime Minister not waive privilege? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Or rather, the Minister. The Minister, former Minister, shared a letter with all Canadians. All members are here. All of us here are here to work hard for Canadians. That's my priority. It's priority of this government and members on our side. We're working for Canadians. That is what we've been doing. That is what we will continue to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, every day since the revelations of the Globe and Mail, the Prime Minister has been giving us a new version, and the story seems to change by the day. Yesterday, his principal secretary, also his close friend, resigned, saying he'd done nothing wrong. And yet, the situation is a very serious one. We're hearing talk of political interference in our justice system. Only one person can give us the truth, and that is the former Attorney General. Will the Prime Minister simply allow her to speak? The Honourable House Leader. Mr. Speaker, once again, the member across the way knows that the Principal Secretary shared his letter, shared his reasons. The Prime Minister accepted Gerald Butt's resignation. And we, on this side of the House, we will continue working hard for Canadians. We believe in the independence of the judicial system, and we will encourage them to do their work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, for the last 13 days, the Prime Minister's answers on this issue have been all over the map. First, he denied Then there was a whisper campaign out of his office insulting and disparaging the former Attorney General. And now, Mr. Speaker, there is the answer of, it's not my fault, it's got to have been somebody else's fault, and his principal secretary has resigned, but for no reason. This government is in absolute chaos and disarray. Canadians deserve answers. We need to hear from the former Attorney General. Will the Prime Minister waive privilege and let her speak?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as I have stated in French, I will now state in English once again. The former Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister has shared his reasons publicly with all Canadians. The Prime Minister has accepted his resignation. When it comes to the independence of our judicial system or officers of Parliament, we respect their work. That is a clear contrast from the previous government that constantly undermined the work that they did. We will not do that on this side, Mr. Speaker. We'll continue working hard for Canadians, the very people that sent us here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader. Order.
That was not an answer, Mr. Speaker, and that was frankly embarrassing to see the government House Leader do that. Mr. Speaker, there is nobody who is watching this scandal saying that there's nothing to see here. From political commentators to the media to legal experts, there are questions that have to be answered. The actions of this government are actions of a government and a Prime Minister who have something to hide. So, Mr. Speaker, there is somebody who can answer. That's the former Attorney General. We want answers. Canadians want answers. Will you let her speak?
I remind the Honourable Opposition House Leader to direct her comments to the Chair. Order. The Honourable Government House Leader. Oh, sorry, the Honourable Minister of Justice, excuse me.
The Prime Minister has asked me for advice, Mr. Speaker, on the question of solicitor-client privilege. I am studying the issue and will provide an answer in due course. It would be inappropriate for me, Mr. Speaker, to comment any further.
The Honourable Member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
I guess he's on the clock, Mr. Speaker. To the Prime Minister, some good advice. That the best thing about telling the truth is that it's easy to repeat because it doesn't change. But this Prime Minister treats the truth like his socks. He's got a different version for every day of the week. His most trusted advisor has resigned under a cloud of controversy and attempted to change the channel. The Prime Minister's office ran what many saw as a sexist and racist smear campaign against the former Attorney General. In my experience, powerful people don't quit their powerful jobs because they're innocent. So Liberals finally work with us to get the answers that Canadians rightly deserve.
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I can state that I know that committee members have been having this conversation. We know that members from all sides have been having that conversation. I understand that a Liberal member will be putting forward a motion today at committee to have the access that members are asking for. We are the government that increased resources to committees so that they can do the important work they do. No differently, we respect the work of officers of Parliament. We respect the independence of the judicial system. We believe that they should do their important work rather than continue to speculate like that member chooses to do continuously. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley. Order.
I remember when this story first broke. What did the Prime Minister say? It's entirely false. Well, Canadians just ain't buying what he's selling. The former Attorney General warned us in her letter, as she was being removed from that office, that the Attorney General must be free from political interference. But for these Liberals, there's two sets of rules. One set of laws for the wealthy and the well-connected, and another set for everybody else. This Prime Minister promised to be different, to work for all Canadians, but people aren't buying their story. So will Liberals finally get on the right side of this scandal and join with us in getting to the bottom of this sordid affair?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, we're confident that both the Ethics Committee investigation and the work that is being done by the Standing Committee will proceed independently and proceed as they should under our current parliamentary procedures. Mr. Speaker, I will fully cooperate with these processes, so will my colleagues, and it would be inappropriate for me to comment on the substance of the matter any further.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, Gerald Butts resigned, giving no reason, they're claiming he is innocent, but innocent people don't resign. Will the Prime Minister authorize Mr. Butts to appear before the Justice Committee so we can learn the real reasons he resigned? The Honourable House Leader. Mr. Speaker, we know that the former Principal Secretary shared his reasons for resigning. The Prime Minister accepted what he asked for. The committee's work is independent. They will do their work, and I would encourage the committee to continue doing their work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member. Mr. Speaker, when Mr. Butts left yesterday, he denied any hint of political interference. But if the former Attorney General could appear, then we would know the truth. Canadians would have the truth. Will the Prime Minister authorize Gerald Butts to appear before the committee, yes or no? The Honourable Minister of Justice. Mr. Speaker, as I just said in English, we're convinced that there is a process that the Ethics Commissioner has in hand and another being dealt with by the committee. There are two independent processes, both of them with very high standards and independent, as I said. It would be inappropriate for me to comment on either.
Albert Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, last week Liberals on the Justice Committee did the PMO's bidding by voting against calling key witnesses, including Gerald Butts, the Prime Minister's top political advisor, as well as the former Attorney General. Allegations that the former Attorney General was pressed by officials in the PMO to interfere in a criminal prosecution are as serious as they get. So, will the Prime Minister stop the cover-up and allow Butts and the former Attorney General to come to committee and waive any purported solicitor-client privilege involving the former Attorney General?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, once again, there are two processes ongoing, both of which are independent. First is with the Ethics Commissioner. The second is the Standing Committee on Justice. They're independent committees. I will cooperate fully with these investigations, as will my colleagues, and it would be inappropriate for me to comment any further.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert Edmonton.
Attorney General Michael Bryant stated that allegations involving top PMO officials, including Gerald Butts, are, quote, the kind of allegations that can lead to criminal investigations, unquote. Canadians deserve answers, not a PMO-driven cover-up. So once again, will the Prime Minister stop the cover-up and allow Butts and the former Attorney General the opportunity to speak so Canadians can get the answers that they deserve, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are confident in our government institutions. We're confident in the work of the Ethics Commissioner. We're confident in the work of the Standing Committee on Justice.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquin-Angers. Mr. Speaker, Canadians want a Prime Minister who works hard to improve the quality of their lives, and not a Prime Minister who signs agreements behind closed doors with multinationals. Now it's clear. When Bay Street asks for help, the Liberals jump into action. But when Canadians need help, the Liberals make them wait. People deserve a government that is transparent and works for them. Why do the Liberals prefer to give rich people on Bay Street a free ride instead of improving the lives for all Canadians across the country? The Honourable Government House Leader. As I said earlier, Mr. Speaker, all members of Parliament are here to work for Canadians. That is our priority as a government. We will continue to make the investments to help Canadians. That is why we put in place programs like the Canada Child Benefit, among others. And we can see that this has yielded results for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We spent the day, Mr. Speaker, urging the Prime Minister to waive any solicitor-client privilege that may exist here and allow the former Attorney General to speak to troubling allegations of alleged political interference. Within the hour, the Justice Committee will meet to discuss witnesses. The Liberal members on that committee will have the chance to do the right thing. Now, Canadians deserve answers. Does the Prime Minister not agree that the Justice Committee, at a minimum, must hear from those at the center of the story, the officials in the Prime Minister's office, Mr. Bouchard, Mr. Butts, and others, as well as the former Attorney General?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, once again, I reiterate that our government is confident in the work of the Standing Committee on Justice, as we are confident in the work of the Essex Commissioner. Those are independent committees. They will do their work under the public eye, and we will fully cooperate with both of them.
The honourable member for Mississauga, East Cooksville.
Mr. Speaker, our government has shown an unprecedented commitment to the fight against poverty. Since 2015, we've helped Canadians through the Canada Child Benefit and enhanced benefits for seniors. More than 650,000 Canadians have been lifted out of poverty. In the Poverty Reduction Act, the government outlined its goal for achieving the lowest level of poverty in Canada's history. Could the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development tell this House what further actions we will be taking to meet this ambitious target?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank first the member for Mississauga East Cooksville for his hard work on behalf of his constituents. From day one of our mandate, we worked very hard to give every Canadian a fair and a real chance to succeed. And that's why in July 2016, we introduced the historic Canada Child Benefit, which every month is lifting out of poverty 300,000 children. That's why in a few weeks from now, we'll introduce the new Canada Workers Benefit, which is going to lift out of poverty 75,000 lower wage workers. And that's why next year, we'll be introducing the new Canada Housing Benefit, giving 300,000 families.
Honourable member for Carleton.
Michael Bryant is the former Ontario Liberal Attorney General. And he said this: a lot of police officers have laid a lot of obstruction of justice charges on a lot of ordinary Canadians with a lot less evidence than this. Can the Prime Minister confirm if any member of his office, past or present, or any member of his cabinet have been contacted by the RCMP with relation to this matter?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as I have stated time and time again, we on this side respect the independence of the RCMP. We respect the independence of officers of Parliament. The RCMP will do their work. We will not comment on that situation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable order. The honourable member for Carleton.
The RCMP will do their work, and she will not comment on that situation. That's an interesting answer, because the Prime Minister's top advisor of decades long resigned suddenly and inexplicably yesterday, and interestingly before anyone on this side had even asked for such a resignation, which raises the question of whether or not there's something more that we don't yet know about. So can the Prime Minister tell us if any member of his staff has been contacted by the RCMP on this matter?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the Prime Minister's former Principal Secretary, he has put out a public letter. He has shared it with all Canadians. He has given his reasons. The Prime Minister has accepted his reason. What I know, it's clear, is that all members and all of our teams want to work hard for Canadians. That has been this government's focus. That will remain our focus, and moving forward, that's what our priority is. It's Canadians to ensure that they have a better quality of life, and that's exactly what our record shows. That's exactly what the results show. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious question. A former Attorney General from Ontario said that if a politician had stepped into a case like this, he would have hung up and called the police. And this is exactly what we're talking about here with the NC-Lavalin scandal. So the question is very simple. Did the Prime Minister, Gerald Butts, or someone else in the Prime Minister's office, or have they been contacted by the RCMP regarding the SNC-Lavalin scandal? Yes or no?
Sean.
The Honourable Government House Leader. The former Principal Secretary shared a letter with all Canadians, and he shared his reasons for stepping down. Anyone can read them. The Conservatives continue their doublespeak in French. They
say that they have no intention to do anything to hinder the workers at SNC-Lavalin, but when they speak English, it's very different. It's the opposite. And they aren't hiding their intentions, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, we all acknowledge the Liberal government's ability to give 5 different versions on the SNC-Lavalin scandal and the former Attorney General. So, Mr. Speaker, the question is very simple. There's one question. Who knows what happened? There are some 330 MPs here, and that person is in the House. Will the Prime Minister finally give the former Attorney General the right to speak Canadians want to hear? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has sought a legal opinion from me on secrecy. I am analyzing the matter and will provide my opinion in a timely manner. It would be inappropriate to comment on this issue any further.
For Windsor West.
When General Motors announced the closure of the Oshawa plant, thousands of workers and their families were left twisting in the wind. This Prime Minister is siding with GM's corporate greed and not on the side of the Canadians when he's all talk and no action. Oshawa auto workers have called on this Liberal government to not purchase GM vehicles not made in Canada for government procurement. The Prime Minister talks about supporting the workers. Now here is a specific request on the table. Will he do what they have asked?
The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, our government has been absolutely clear when it comes to supporting the automotive sector and the auto workers. We, through our programming and policies, have seen significant investments in the automotive sector since 2015. With the recent announcement by QNX BlackBerry, that takes us over $6 billion worth of investments. With respects to Oshawa, we've been very clear when it comes to Unifor, when it comes to GM. We will be at the table, part of the solution to protect those jobs going forward, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Essex.
Well, no one has even seen you in Oshawa. Well, Mr. Speaker, it's clear this...
I guess it's been a while since I've been in Oshawa. Order. I remind the Honourable Member for Essex to direct her comments to the Chair.
No one has even seen a Liberal in Oshawa, Mr. Speaker. It's clear this Liberal government would rather invest their time and energy to help rich, corrupt corporations get off the hook instead of standing up for the thousands of GM workers who are scrambling to ensure a future for their families. Canadians deserve a government that is willing to stand up and fight for their job and communities. The Canadian government has spent $320 million over the last 10 years buying GM vehicles for public use. Will this Prime Minister stand up for Canadian workers and commit now to stop buying GM cars with taxpayer money that are not built or...
The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Speaker, we've always defended and supported the auto workers. We've always stood up for the automotive sector. It's through our policies and programs that we've seen historic investments. We actually turned the corner because under the previous Conservative government, 50,000 automotive jobs were lost in the first 3 years. 2 years before, 20,000 jobs before the recession even hit. We understand how important Oshawa is. We'll continue to work with Mary Barra, GM, and also Jerry Dias as well to find a solution to protect these very important jobs in Oshawa.
Well, member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's most trusted advisor has now resigned over the SNC-Lavalin scandal. I swore an oath to serve and defend this country, as did many of my colleagues on both sides of this House. This is not about partisan politics. It's about trust in our democracy and a judicial system.
Order. Order, we need to hear the question. Order. The Honourable Member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill. Order.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and luckily on this side of the House I have the opportunity to speak. Staff been contacted by the RCMP on this scandal.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
of such activity. To refer to the members' other comments, I on this side am very proud of the work that we are doing as a government. We can see that the results speak for themselves. The investments that we are making are seeing 300,000 plus children lifted out of poverty. We see that our communities are growing. We see the investments in infrastructure are working. We see our municipalities are stronger than ever before. We should be very proud of this work, and we know that we have to continue working hard so that Canadians can succeed. That's exactly who we are here for. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
I think my honourable colleague may be forgetting that as a Minister of the Crown, she swore an oath to faithfully execute the power entrusted to her, which includes protecting our judicial system from political interference. If a minister won't stand up and be counted to defend the principles of our democracy, who will? So the question is simple. Has any current or former cabinet minister or staff been contacted by the RCMP on this scandal?
Honourable Government House Leader.
We have no knowledge of any such activity. I think that's a fairly clear answer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Well, Mr. Speaker, one might think if the RCMP had contacted former or current cabinet ministers or current or former PMO operatives that they might know about that, Mr. Speaker. The fact that they don't know whether the RCMP has or has not started an investigation is troubling. This is a scandal that goes right to the heart of the Prime Minister's offices. So we will ask again, has the RCMP contacted any current or former cabinet minister or staff or any current or former Prime Minister's office individuals in order to get to the bottom of this obstruction of justice case?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, we have no knowledge of any such activity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Davenport.
Mr. Speaker, economists are virtually unanimous in the view that carbon pricing reduces greenhouse gas emissions at the lowest possible cost to the economy. It is disappointing that while climate change is having a real impact on the health and well-being of Canadians, Conservative politicians are wasting millions of taxpayer dollars fighting climate action in court. Meanwhile, they still have no plan to protect the environment. Can the minister please update the House on the actions our government is taking to fight climate change while growing our economy? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the honourable member for Toronto Denver for her long-time advocacy on climate change. It was great to see last week in Saskatchewan at the court that we had farmers represented, we had young people represented, we had environmentalists represented, we had doctors represented, health professionals, economists represented, saying we need to put a price on pollution, we need to take action on climate change. And we know that you can do it in an affordable way, that you can do it in an effective way by giving money back. A family of 4 in Ontario will get $307 more than 8 out of 10 families will pay. It's unfortunately the other side.
The
honourable member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, d'Orléans, Charlevoix. 1999, Shawinigan. 2004, Gomery Commission. 2017, the first time a Prime Minister is found guilty on an ethics matter. Today, political interference in a legal process. The Liberal government is losing the confidence of Canadians. And with the third resignation by an influential person, the Prime Minister's right-hand man and friend, Gerald Butts, Canadians are entitled to real answers. Given these conclusion, will the government accept to shed light on this matter by voting in favour of a public inquiry? The Honourable Minister of Justice. Mr. Speaker, we are convinced that the 2 independent processes will be conducted in depth and fairly, and Canadians will find the information they are seeking. The committee, as well as the Ethics Commissioner, are 2 entities in which we have confidence. The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagot.
Mr. Speaker, this weekend, part of the arena roof of the Algonquin community of Témiscamingue First Nation collapsed overnight, then the structure caught fire. The community have worked very hard to build this arena, and all this effort have disappeared in smoke. They need our help. Can Témiscamingue First Nation count on the Liberals to rebuild the arena?
The Honourable Minister. Indigenous Services.
And my department, my officials will look into the matter immediately. Wherever we can be of assistance, we will be. And we always look for a community-led solution wherever we can. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Steveston, Richmond East.
Mr. Speaker, in January, the Minister of Transport met with provincial and territorial counterparts. Can the Minister inform us today of the Liberal government's intention to deal with climate change? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague, the member for Steveston, Richmond East, for this excellent question. We acknowledge the importance of climate change and the purchase of zero-emission vehicles. We are proceeding, unlike the Conservatives, with concrete actions. They continue to deny climate change. We still haven't seen their environmental plan. We are taking tangible action to ensure that our children and grandchildren have a clean environment.
Calgary Nose Hill.
There was a time when men could tell women, "Shh, honey, nothing to see here, I'll speak for you." By refusing to allow the former Justice Minister to speak on allegations of using his office to influence the outcome of a massive criminal corporate corruption case while speaking for her, he is saying that time is not past. Will the Prime Minister allow her to freely speak instead of telling Canadians day after day that yet another woman experienced things differently than he did?
Wow.
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Speaker, the Prime Minister has asked me for advice on the question of solicitor-client privilege. I'm studying the issue and will provide my legal advice in due course. It would be inappropriate for me, Mr. Speaker, to comment any further.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, everyone white-collar criminals who were charged at SNC-Lavalin to be held legally accountable. What we don't want in the bloc is to lose thousands of jobs and another head office in Quebec. Simple. But despite it, the Prime Minister continues to get more and more bogged down on the matter and is desperately seeking to blame anyone, for this fiasco. Can they guarantee that workers at SNC-Lavalin will not be the victims of a series of mistakes that the Prime Minister is responsible on regarding this file? Mr. Speaker, our government has done its work properly and is following all of the rules. We are working in compliance with the law. We will continue to do so. We will work hard on behalf of all Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, the mountain of mistakes made in this crisis is a catastrophe. And compared to it, it's almost as if the Trans Mountain file had been well managed. But the Prime Minister has gotten bogged down in this situation, and the jobs of thousands of workers in Quebec are at stake. Will the government take action within the parameters of the law to keep the SNC head office in Montreal and the thousands of jobs associated with it? Or will I continue to make the Prime Minister yawn? In our parliamentary system, we focus on workers while complying with all legal aspects. We will continue to defend the workers, Mr. Speaker. We will always defend the rule of law in Canada, and we will respect the rules of ethics surrounding these matters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Intergovernmental and Northern Affairs and Internal Trade. It was recently announced that the long-awaited Arctic and Northern Policy Framework may finally be ready for release in June. Past actions by this government affecting Indigenous people, like the Indigenous Languages Act, the draft Indigenous Child Welfare Act, have been more showpiece than substance, more buzzwords than actual impact. Will the Minister assure this House that this new policy framework will actually have the teeth to effect meaningful change Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs and Northern Affairs.
Speaker, and I thank my colleague from Nunavut for his question. And I also say that this is a question that is very important to many Arctic and Northern people in our country. We know that and understand that if we are going to succeed in North and Arctic regions of Canada, that people have to be the architects of their own vision and be able to move forward. As the Government of Canada, we are working in partnership with territories, provinces, and Indigenous governments to do just that. We are co-developing a policy that will lead to a strong economic and tremendous growth in the Arctic and Northern regions.
L'honorable député de Rivière-du-Nord.
The honourable member for Rivière-du-Nord is rising on a point of order. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think you'll find unanimous consent on the following motion, that in the opinion of the House, the government must, in the matter of SNC-Lavalin, do everything in its power within the parameters of the law and, as set out in Section 715.31 of the Criminal Code, to reduce the negative consequences of the wrongdoing for certain former executive persons, employees, clients, pensioners, and others who did not engage in the wrongdoing while holding responsible those who did engage in that wrongdoing in order to preserve the thousands of jobs in Quebec and in Canada and ensure that the company's headquarters remain in Montreal. Does the honourable member have unanimous consent to move the motion? No, there is not unanimous consent. The honourable member for Hochelaga on a point of order. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There have been discussions among the parties, and I believe if you seek it, you will find that there is unanimous consent for the following motion, that at the conclusion of the debate today on the opposition motion in the name of the member for Timmins James Bay, any question to dispose of the motion